What would you do if you saw an 8-year-old girl walk into a courtroom, look the judge in the eye and declare, "I'm here as my mother's attorney"? That's exactly what happened in Boston, and what followed left the entire city speechless. She wasn't a prodigy trained in law. She wasn't coached by any legal team. She was just a child with a hand-decorated folder, a borrowed blazer far too big for her, and a heart full of fire. But what no one knew, not even the girl herself, was that her bold stand would do more than just save her mother's job. It would unravel a hidden web of corruption stretching across elite schools and reconnect her with the father she never knew existed. A father who just happened to be watching the news and saw his past, his mistake, and his own daughter staring back at him from the screen. Stay with us, because what began as one child's desperate attempt to protect her mother soon became a nationwide reckoning and a second chance at family no one saw coming. That morning in Boston started like any other. The judge was reviewing documents. The courtroom murmured with routine tension. But the moment the door creaked open and 8-year-old Emma Parker stepped in, everything froze. She walked slowly, steadily toward the front, her small shoes tapping against the marble floor. The oversized navy blazer almost swallowed her, the sleeves dragging as she clutched a cardboard folder covered in hand-drawn hearts. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear but trembling slightly, "I'm here as my mother's attorney." The entire courtroom turned to look. The judge, the clerks, the lawyers, no one breathed. Rachel Evans, Emma's mother, sat in the back, too stunned to move. The judge, a seasoned man named Thomas Whitaker, lowered his glasses and blinked twice. This wasn't a school play or a protest. This was a legal hearing, and a child had just disrupted it with more dignity than half the adults in the room. And yet something about Emma's presence silenced objections before they could be formed. 3 months earlier, Rachel had been fired from St. James Academy, a prestigious private school in Boston, where she worked as a kitchen supervisor. The reasons listed were vague, poor fit violations of conduct failure to align with institutional standards. But behind those generic phrases hid a reality much darker. Rachel had discovered that the school under Principal Harold Lawson was exploiting immigrant and single mother employees. 12 to 14-hour shifts without overtime pay, unsafe kitchen conditions, expired food, and every time someone complained, their contract wasn't renewed. Rachel had stayed quiet for 2 years until a child got sick from food poisoning. That was her breaking point. She documented violations, reported concerns, and was fired the next day. She hadn't meant for Emma to know, but Emma was the kind of child who noticed everything. She saw her mom whispering on the phone in the bathroom late at night. She saw the unopened bills, the sleepless eyes, the bruised pride, and she decided in her 8-year-old mind that if no one was going to help her mother, she would. What no one knew, not even Rachel, was that Emma had spent the last month building a case. She had convinced their neighbor, Mrs. Helen Carter, a retired literature teacher, to explain legal terms to her. She started waiting at the park across the street from St. James Academy, approaching janitors and cafeteria workers with a question so innocent they always stopped. "Excuse me, do you know my mom?" She worked in the kitchen, and one by one they talked. She heard about Rosa, who got sick from handling spoiled meat, but was told to keep working or lose her job. About Mr. Alvarez, the gardener, who saw Lawson scream at Rachel in the loading dock. And about Linda Harper, the janitor who admitted she'd been pressured into signing a statement that wasn't true, saying Rachel had stolen supplies. Emma wrote down everything in a notebook shaped like a cat using crayons and markers. She even recorded a conversation on an old flip phone. Linda gave her a recording where Principal Lawson talked to the assistant director about getting rid of troublemakers before they hit the 2-year mark and qualify for benefits. And so on that morning, Emma stood in court facing a room full of adults in suits and declared, "My mom didn't do anything wrong, but the people at the school, they hurt her and others." For a moment, the judge hesitated, torn between procedure and instinct. Then he leaned forward and said, "Miss Parker, you may proceed." She opened her folder. Inside were drawings of kitchen layouts based on her mom's descriptions, testimonies written in childish handwriting but quoting adults word for word. And last, she pulled out the flip phone and handed it to the court clerk. "This has a recording," she said. "It's important." When the recording played and Principal Lawson's voice was heard joking about firing tired single moms who can't afford to fight back, the courtroom shifted. Murmurs, gasping. The defense attorney for St. James Academy stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular, a minor." "Sit down," the judge snapped. "This minor just presented more evidence than your client." Rachel stared at her daughter, completely undone. It was the first time in weeks she had allowed herself to hope. And somewhere across the city in a luxury penthouse, Michael Grant, a powerful education entrepreneur, sat frozen in front of the TV. He hadn't meant to watch the news that morning, but while flipping channels, a local segment caught his eye. Girl 8 declares herself attorney in labor case. He was about to laugh at the clickbait title until he saw the mother sitting in the back row of the courtroom. Rachel. He hadn't heard her name in years, but the woman on the screen was unmistakable, his college sweetheart, the girl who disappeared during senior year, the girl who never told him why. He turned up the volume, heart pounding. Could that girl on the screen Emma be? He stood up shaking. The camera zoomed in, and he saw it, the way she wrinkled her nose before speaking, just like Rachel used to. The way her eyes narrowed, her jaw set firm when she was serious. It wasn't just resemblance. She was his daughter, and he had never even known. Forgive us for the interruption, but we promise this story is only getting more intense. Do you think Emma made the right choice standing up for her mother that way? Should Michael reveal the truth now, or would that only complicate things more? If this story moved you, please like the video and tap the heart. Your support helps us tell more stories that matter. Right now, Michael Grant couldn't breathe. The courtroom footage continued on the TV, but he was no longer listening. His world had gone silent except for the pounding in his chest. It wasn't just that Rachel was back. It wasn't just that the child looked like her. It was the way the girl stood, firm, brave, determined. Just like Rachel had back in college when she challenged professors in front of packed lecture halls, when she stood in protest against injustice, when she told him she believed in fighting for what was right no matter how alone she was in doing so. Now here was this child standing in front of a judge protecting her mother with a folder full of scribbled drawings and testimonies, and she bore his eyes, his jawline. Michael had spent the last 15 years building an empire in educational investments, ironically funding institutions just like St. James Academy. But no article, no business deal, no TV appearance had ever unraveled him like this. That little girl was his daughter, and Rachel had never told him. He picked up the remote, paused the screen. Emma's face stared back at him in mid-sentence. He felt a deep ache settle in his chest, shame, confusion, and a sudden urgency he couldn't name. He had to find her. Meanwhile, back in Rachel's tiny apartment on the outskirts of Boston, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. At first, it was local journalists asking for interviews, then national networks. By noon, strangers had shown up outside their building holding signs. "You're our hero." Emma. Rachel peeked through the curtains and froze. Two men in suits were taking pictures of their window. Another car circled the block slowly for the third time in 10 minutes. "Mom," Emma whispered from the couch, clutching her notebook. "Why are people watching our house?" Rachel didn't answer. She was trying to stay calm, but her hands were trembling. Something wasn't right. That evening, Mrs. Helen Carter came rushing over from next door, her cheeks flushed. "Rachel, sweetheart, you need to get out of here. Take Emma and go somewhere safe for the night." "I don't like what I'm hearing." "What do you mean?" Helen closed the blinds. "Two different reporters just told me that someone powerful has hired a crisis PR team. They're going to flip the narrative, make you look unstable, say you're exploiting Emma. They're moving fast." Rachel exhaled sharply. "They're going to paint her like she's just a child being used, not someone who stood up on her own." "They're not interested in truth," Helen said. "They're interested in silence." And then the phone rang again. Rachel picked it up. A calm male voice spoke on the line. "Ms. Evans, you don't know me, but let's say I represent interests who'd rather not see this story on every screen in the country. You've made your point. Now let it go. Who are you? Think of me as someone trying to be generous. You and your daughter will be well compensated. But if you insist on going public, well, accidents happen." Rachel's knees gave out. She dropped the phone. Emma ran to her side. The next morning, Emma and Rachel left through the back alley with Helen's help. They spent the day hiding in an old bookstore Helen's cousin owned, but the fear didn't go away. That same day across town, a new ally emerged. His name was Daniel Brooks, an investigative reporter for the Boston Ledger. He was also Helen Carter's nephew. And when Helen told him what had happened in court, he dug deeper. Within hours, Daniel found financial documents linking St. James Academy to a network of 6 elite schools. And in those documents, one name kept surfacing: Michael Grant. But what Daniel didn't expect was Michael calling him directly. "I think I know who Emma Parker is," Michael said quietly over the phone. "Oh," Daniel asked. "She's my daughter." Daniel blinked. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need to know the truth about what happened to Rachel. And I need to fix what I broke without breaking more." By the end of the day, Daniel and Michael met privately. What Michael shared was shocking: the pregnancy, Rachel's sudden disappearance, the silence of 15 years. But Daniel had something too. He played a recording. It was a janitor, Linda Harper, speaking in a trembling voice. "They made me lie. Said they'd fire me if I didn't. But I recorded everything. I have 2 years of files. They blacklisted Rachel. And it wasn't just her." Michael's face turned pale. He had unknowingly funded this. Rachel had suffered. Emma had grown up fatherless. And now if he didn't act, he might lose them both again. That night, on a breaking news segment aired live, the world watched as Emma gave her first interview. Her voice was small, but her words were powerful. "I just wanted my mom to smile again. I didn't think anyone would listen to me. But I had to try." Rachel off camera wept silently. And just outside the studio doors, Michael stood in the shadows, watching his daughter from a distance for now. Because some truths couldn't be whispered forever. "We're so sorry to pause the story here, but trust us, what happens next will leave you breathless. If you were Michael, would you tell Emma the truth right now? Or wait until the dust settles? Do you think Rachel will forgive him once she learns what he's been hiding?" If this part moved you, please like the video and drop a heart. It helps more people find stories that matter. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive with a bang. It creeps in quietly through the back door of your life, and suddenly everything you thought you knew has changed. It was just past noon when Rachel and Emma returned home after 2 days in hiding. The apartment was still untouched, but something in Rachel had shifted. She wasn't just scared anymore. She was ready. She had seen her daughter speak live on television, confident, composed, fearless. And she realized Emma wasn't just defending her. Emma was leading something much bigger. Rachel stood in the middle of their small living room and whispered, "If my 8-year-old daughter can fight this hard, what excuse do I have to give up now?" The very next morning, Rachel contacted Daniel Brooks and said, "Tell the full story. Don't hold back. Use every document, every recording, and put my name on it." That same evening, the Boston Ledger published a groundbreaking exposé titled, "The Hidden Cost of Prestige: How Elite Schools Exploit the Voiceless." It named names, exposed contracts, revealed the corruption that tied 6 elite institutions, including St. James Academy, to a fraudulent system of labor abuse. And at the heart of the article, an 8-year-old girl who had simply wanted her mother to stop crying. The impact was immediate. The Massachusetts Attorney General ordered an investigation within 24 hours. Former employees from across the state came forward. And social media, which had once doubted Rachel, now hailed Emma as the little lawyer who changed everything. But for Michael Grant, things were far from over. His name had been mentioned in the article, not as a villain, but as a silent investor. The press asked questions. His board panicked. And his silence, once a strategy, became a burden. That night, Michael called Rachel. She didn't answer. He tried again. Finally, on the 3rd attempt, her voice came through. "I'm listening," she said. There was a pause. "I didn't know," Michael began. "Not about Emma, not about what they were doing, but I know now, and I want to make it right. Not just with money or statements or spin. I want to stand beside you, as her father, and as a man who failed to ask questions when it mattered." Rachel was quiet for a long time. "You left," she said. "I didn't know you were carrying our child. You never looked." He didn't argue. But then she asked why now. "Because when I saw her, standing there in court, I saw you. I saw what I missed, and I'm not missing it again." 2 days later, in a press conference streamed nationwide, Michael Grant stood beside Rachel and Emma. He looked exhausted, unshaven, but honest. "I helped build these institutions," he said, but I never asked what it cost the people working inside them. My daughter did, so from now on, I'll follow her lead. He announced the creation of a $10 million fund for abused school workers and a coalition with state agencies to enforce labor protections in private education. But the real moment came when he stepped aside and let Emma speak. She walked up to the podium, stood on a wooden crate to reach the microphone and said, "I'm just a kid, but sometimes grown-ups forget that kids notice everything. And sometimes when something's wrong, the smallest voice can say the biggest truth." A week later, the state reinstated Rachel's employment and offered her a new position, Director of Community Advocacy for Educational Fairness. Her first act, hiring Linda Harper, the janitor who risked everything to speak out. Emma returned to school, but not as just any student. She was now the founder of the Courage Club, a space where kids could talk about bullying, unfairness, and how to speak up safely. Within a month, it spread to 5 schools across Boston. By the end of the year 20, and the most unexpected change of all, every evening after dinner, Rachel and Michael sat with Emma at the kitchen table. They laughed, played word games. They were building something fragile but real. One night, Emma looked up and said, "Dad, I'm glad you came back." Michael's eyes welled up. "I should have come sooner," he said, "but I'm never leaving again." Emma smiled. "Good, because we've got more work to do." That spring, Emma released a children's book called Speak Loud Even If You're Small. It became an instant bestseller, and in the dedication she wrote, "For my mom who taught me to stand tall, for my dad who showed me people can change, and for every kid who's afraid to speak, your voice matters. Use it." Now let us ask you this. Do you believe in second chances the way Emma gave her father one? Have you ever seen courage come from someone you least expected? We'd love to know what you think of this story. Comment no and 3 below if you loved it, no. 1 if you weren't satisfied, or no or 2 if you found it just okay. And let us know what country you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and tap the heart to support stories that matter.